Rachel Anderson arrived at her aunt's countryside home with a single suitcase and a tired heart. After a long, messy breakup and endless noise from city life, she just wanted peace. The road leading to the house was lined with tall oaks and glowing wildflowers. And for the first time in months, she felt she could breathe again. Her aunt, a cheerful woman who ran a small flower farm, hugged her tightly and said she was glad Rachel had come. But within an hour, her aunt was already rushing around packing for a 2-week family trip she couldn't cancel. "Ethan will be here to help with the animals," her aunt said while loading bags into the car. "He's been staying here to take care of things. He'll be fine." Rachel nodded politely, pretending not to care who Ethan was. But when he walked out from the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth, her heart gave a small, surprised jump. He was tall, tanned from the sun, with steady blue eyes and a quiet expression. He smiled in a way that felt both friendly and distant, like someone who had learned to stay calm no matter what life threw at him. "Hey," he said simply, "you must be Rachel." "Yeah," she replied, trying not to sound nervous. After her aunt's car disappeared down the dirt road, the silence around the farmhouse felt thick. No traffic, no city sounds, just wind, the creak of trees, and the distant call of birds. Ethan leaned against the porch rail and said, "Guess it's just the two of us then." Rachel gave a small laugh, unsure what else to say. That evening, the house felt both too big and too quiet. Rachel unpacked, walked around the place, and tried to settle in. She found Ethan fixing the railing outside, his sleeves rolled up, focused and patient. Something about him drew her attention, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet pull of curiosity. He barely looked up, just said, "You can grab dinner from the kitchen if you're hungry. I made some pasta earlier." That surprised her. "You cook?" she asked. "Only when no one else wants to starve," he said with a faint smile. Later, they ate together at this small wooden table, surrounded by the soft hum of night. Rachel noticed the way the lantern light caught the curve of his jaw, the calm rhythm in how he spoke. Ethan asked her about the city, about what brought her there, and she admitted she just needed time to think. He didn't press her for details, and that small kindness made her like him more. When thunder rolled in the distance, they decided to light a fire. The rain began softly at first, then heavier, filling the air with the smell of wet earth. They sat by the fireplace, the glow lighting their faces, and talked about simple things, books, favorite songs, small childhood memories. Ethan wasn't one for many words, but when he spoke, it felt like every sentence meant something. Rachel found herself opening up, telling him things she hadn't said to anyone else in months. "I used to paint," she said softly, "but I stopped after. Well, after things fell apart." "Maybe you should start again," he said. "Some things come back when we let them." The way he said it made her look at him longer than she should have. There was no flirtation, no rushed, just quiet honesty. The fire popped, and outside the rain grew heavier. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped spinning, and only the two of them existed in that warm, golden space. Ethan stood up to check the windows, and Rachel followed, unsure why. They ended up standing close near the window, both staring out at the storm. Lightning flashed, and for a second, she saw their reflections, two people from different worlds, somehow standing side by side. When their eyes met, something passed between them. It wasn't love yet, not even desire, just recognition. A spark of understanding. The kind that happens when two people who've both been hurt find a little comfort in each other's company. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," she said, though her voice came out softer than she intended. He smiled and went back to the fireplace, adding another log. Rachel sat down again, pretending to warm her hands, but her thoughts were far away. She couldn't explain the feeling, but it was there, steady, silent, growing stronger. They didn't talk much after that. Ethan read a book. Rachel watched the fire. The storm outside kept them trapped together, and somehow she didn't mind. The sound of rain, the flicker of the fire, the calm breathing of another person, all felt safe, familiar, like she had finally found a place where she didn't have to pretend she was okay. Later that night, when she went to her room, she paused by the doorway and looked back. Ethan was still by the fire, lost in thought. The soft light brushed against his face, and Rachel felt a quiet ache inside her chest. She didn't know what it was or where it would lead, but she knew something had started that evening, something she hadn't expected to feel again. Lying in bed, she could still hear the rain tapping on the window, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The silence of the house no longer felt empty. It felt alive, humming with unspoken thoughts. She turned over, trying to sleep, but her mind replayed every look, every word, every quiet moment between them. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. The storm was gone, but the memory of last night lingered like perfume in the air. Rachel went downstairs and found Ethan already awake, making coffee. He handed her a cup without a word, and their fingers brushed for a second. It was nothing and yet. It was everything. She smiled. "Thanks. Morning," he said, as if the world hadn't shifted between them. But Rachel felt it. Deep down, she knew that something had changed forever. And as she looked out the window at the drenched fields and clear blue sky, she couldn't help but wonder what the next 2 weeks would bring now that it was just the two of them, and the quiet house that seemed to breathe with their every heartbeat. The summer had only just begun, but Rachel already sensed it. The peace she came looking for wasn't the only thing she was about to find. The next few days moved quietly, like pages turning in an old book. Rachel found herself settling into a slow, peaceful rhythm at her aunt's countryside home. Mornings began with the sound of birds, the smell of coffee, and Ethan already outside tending to the animals. He worked hard, but never made a big deal of it. Rachel often watched him from the porch, his calm focus almost comforting. Soon, helping him became part of her daily routine. She fed the chickens, carried hay, and learned how to brush the horses. The first time she tried, she accidentally dropped the brush into the mud. Ethan laughed a soft, genuine laugh that surprised her. "You're a city girl through and through," he teased gently. She rolled her eyes. "Maybe, but I'm learning." "Yeah," he said, still smiling. "You're doing just fine." Little by little, the awkwardness between them faded. Their conversations grew longer. He told her stories about the farm, about losing his parents young, and how he'd found peace working with animals instead of people. Rachel shared how the city had worn her down, how she'd lost herself in a relationship that ended badly. There was no judgment, no pity, just quiet understanding. Every night, they'd sit on the porch watching the sunset paint the fields orange and gold. It became their unspoken routine. They didn't need to say much. The silence between them was comfortable, not heavy. Rachel felt lighter with each passing day, like the countryside was slowly washing away the sadness she'd carried for so long. Then came the storm. It started in the afternoon, a low rumble of thunder, a shift in the wind. By evening, the sky turned gray and heavy, and the first drops of rain hit the porch roof like tiny drums. Ethan hurried outside to pull in tools and cover the hay bales. Rachel followed, helping him carry buckets and shut the barn doors. The wind whipped her hair across her face and rain soaked her shirt, but she couldn't stop laughing. Ethan grinned at her through the downpour. "You're going to catch a cold," he shouted. "So will you?" She yelled back. They ran for cover, slamming the barn doors just as the rain came down in sheets. Inside, it was dim and warm. The air smelled like hay and rain. For a moment, they both stood there, catching their breath, faces flushed from running. Their eyes met, and Rachel felt something stir in her chest, an invisible pull she couldn't explain. Ethan cleared his throat and stepped back. "We should wait it out here," he said. "Yeah," Rachel murmured, brushing wet hair from her face. The sound of rain filled the space, soft and steady. Ethan found an old lantern, lit it, and placed it on a crate between them. Its warm glow flickered over their faces. Rachel sat down, hugging her knees, while Ethan leaned against a wooden post. The silence was peaceful, but beneath it, something new was forming, gentle, uncertain, but undeniably real. After a while, he said quietly, "You seem different this week." "Happier." "Guess I am," she replied. "It's strange. I thought I came here to be alone, but—" She stopped herself. "But you're not alone anymore," he finished for her. Their eyes met again. Neither spoke after that. The moment was simple, but it carried a weight that neither could ignore. When the storm began to calm, thunder fading into the distance, Ethan stood and opened the barn doors slightly. The world outside was dark but peaceful. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and fireflies danced over the wet grass. Rachel stepped up beside him, their shoulders brushing lightly. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yeah," he said softly, though he was looking at her, not the view. They stood there like that, side by side, watching the night. No words, no plans, just quiet closeness. Rachel felt a warmth inside her that had nothing to do with the weather. She had felt broken for so long, but here, in this quiet corner of the world, with this man who barely spoke but always listened, something inside her was healing. When they finally returned to the house, the power was out. Ethan found candles and placed them around the living room, their flickering light filling the space with calm. Rachel wrapped herself in a blanket, still shivering from the cold. Ethan brought her a cup of tea and sat across from her. "Thanks," she said, taking it from him. "You're welcome," he replied, his voice low and kind. The storm outside grew distant, just a soft hum now. They talked again, more openly than ever, about how hard it is to start over, how lonely healing can feel. Ethan listened without interrupting, and when he did speak, his words were simple but full of meaning. Sometimes, he said, the right people walk into your life when you've stopped expecting anyone to show up. Rachel looked at him, the candlelight glowing in his eyes, and her chest tightened. For a second, she wanted to say something, to tell him that maybe he was one of those people, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she just smiled, a small, quiet smile that said everything. Then lightning flashed again, briefly lighting up the room, followed by a soft rumble of thunder. Rachel jumped a little, and Ethan laughed gently. "You still scared of storms?" "Only when they're loud," she admitted. He moved closer, not touching her, just sitting beside her on the couch. "You're safe here," he said. Something about those words hit deeper than he probably meant them to. Safe. That was exactly how she felt with him, safe to be herself. Safe to laugh again, safe to feel something new. They stayed up late that night, talking and laughing softly until the candles burned low. When Rachel finally stood to go to bed, she hesitated at the doorway. "Good night, Ethan," she said. He nodded. "Good night, Rachel." But even as she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her, and she knew she wouldn't sleep easily. Something had shifted between them. It wasn't love yet, it was something quieter, something waiting. The next morning, the world looked washed clean. The sun rose bright over the fields, sparkling on every drop of rain still clinging to the leaves. Rachel stepped outside and breathed deeply. The air was fresh and cool. Ethan was already by the fence, fixing a loose wire, and when he saw her, he smiled. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied. Their voices were light. Casual, but the look they shared wasn't. It said everything their words didn't. Something had started last night. Something small but impossible to ignore. As the day went on, they returned to their usual rhythm work, laughter. Shared meals, but underneath it all was a new tension. Not heavy or uncomfortable, but electric. Every glance felt charged. Every smile lingered a little too long. Rachel didn't know what it was leading to, or if it was meant to last. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't the same girl who had arrived there looking for silence. The storm had passed, but the distance between her and Ethan had disappeared with it. Something real had taken its place. And neither of them could pretend otherwise anymore. The storm had passed, but something inside Rachel had changed. The air around the farmhouse felt different now, lighter, but charged with quiet tension. Every morning when she walked into the kitchen and found Ethan already making coffee, her heart gave a small, uncontrollable jump. She told herself it was just comfort, just gratitude. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Ethan seemed different too. He was still quiet and composed, but now he smiled more, talked a little longer. And his eyes often lingered on her without meaning to. They both pretended not to notice. They moved around each other like two people afraid of stepping too close. afraid that one small spark would start something neither of them was ready for. Days slipped by in soft, sunlit moments. Rachel painted again for the first time in months, setting up her easel by the big window in the living room. She painted the countryside, the golden fields, the rust-red barn, the endless sky. Ethan would pass by, glance at her work, and offer simple words that meant more than he realized. "That's really good," he'd say, his voice calm but genuine. Rachel would smile. "You think so?" "I know so." Sometimes he'd stay a little longer, watching her paint in silence. She could feel his presence behind her, steady, grounding, impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Ethan invited her to the lake nearby. The weather was warm, the sky a soft blue. They packed sandwiches and walked the narrow trail through the trees. Rachel hadn't done something this simple in a long time. No deadlines, no phone buzzing, no pressure. Just air, sunlight, and a quiet man walking beside her. When they reached the lake, the water shimmered under the sun. Ethan skipped a stone across the surface with practiced ease. Rachel laughed as hers sank immediately. "You make it look so easy," she said. "Everything's easy once you stop trying too hard," he replied. They sat on the old wooden pier, feet dangling above the water, their shoulders almost touching. A light breeze brushed against them. For a moment there was no noise, just the sound of water gently lapping against the shore. Rachel spoke first, her voice soft. "You ever wish you could freeze a moment? Just keep it from ending." Ethan looked at her for a long second before answering. "Every time I'm with you." Her heart stopped. The words were simple, almost casual, but the meaning behind them was anything but. She turned to look at him. He wasn't smiling this time. His face was serious, honest, open. "Ethan," she began, but he shook his head slightly, almost as if he regretted saying it out loud. "I didn't mean to make things complicated," he said. "It's just, sometimes you meet someone who reminds you what it feels like to be alive again." Rachel didn't know what to say. She looked down at the water, blinking fast. For months, she'd built walls around herself, telling herself she wasn't ready. That love wasn't safe anymore. But now, with him sitting beside her, she could feel those walls slowly breaking apart. "I know what you mean," she said quietly. Neither of them moved. The air between them felt heavy with things unsaid. Then a car horn sounded in the distance, echoing faintly through the trees. Ethan turned his head, frowning slightly. "Your aunt," he said. "They must be back early." The words hit her like cold water. For a moment, she had forgotten about the rest of the world, the family, the expectations, everything outside this peaceful bubble. Now reality was rushing back fast. They walked back to the house in silence. Rachel's heart raced the entire way. Part of her wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but the right words never came. When they reached the driveway, her aunt's car was already there, doors open, voices filling the air. Her aunt greeted her with warmth and chatter, asking about meals, chores, everything she'd missed. Rachel forced a smile, answering politely, pretending nothing had changed. Ethan greeted them too, polite and composed. But his eyes met Rachel's for just a second, and that look said everything. That evening, the house was full. Again, noise, laughter, the clatter of dishes. It should have felt normal, but Rachel couldn't shake the emptiness pressing on her chest. The easy peace she'd shared with Ethan was gone, replaced by distance and unspoken words. After dinner, she stepped outside for air. The sun was setting, painting the sky pink and gold. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Ethan approaching. He looked unsure, as if he wanted to say something but wasn't sure he should. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just getting used to the noise again." He nodded. "It's different, huh?" "Yeah," she said softly. It was quieter before. They stood there side by side, neither knowing how to bridge the space between them. The silence stretched. Rachel wanted to tell him how much those quiet days had meant to her, how he had made her feel safe, how being with him had changed her, but the words stuck. Instead, she said, "Thank you. For the past 2 weeks. It meant a lot." Ethan looked at her, his expression unreadable. "It meant something to me, too." Her heart skipped. He hesitated, as if he wanted to say more, then stopped himself. "You should get some rest," he said quietly. "You'll need it for the trip home." She nodded, though she wasn't ready to think about leaving. "Good night, Ethan. Good night, Rachel." That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. Every look, every word replayed in her head. She knew what was happening. She was falling for him, but she also knew it wasn't simple. He belonged to this quiet world, and she belonged to another. Maybe what they shared could only exist here, in this small slice of time between storms and silence. The next day, things went on as if nothing had happened. Her aunt talked about upcoming plans. Ethan fixed a fence, and Rachel tried to keep herself busy. But whenever their eyes met, it was there that invisible pull. That unspoken truth. Late in the afternoon, Rachel found him by the barn working on a gate hinge. She wanted to say goodbye properly, to tell him how much he had changed her without even trying. But when he turned and smiled at her, she froze. The words she had practiced in her mind vanished. He noticed the look on her face and gave a small, knowing smile. "You don't have to say it," he said softly. "I already know." Rachel swallowed hard, nodding. "Still, thank you. For what?" "For reminding me what real peace feels like." He nodded once, his eyes gentle. "Take it with you." As she walked back to the house, the sun dipped low behind the hills, and the fields glowed gold one last time. She didn't look back, but she felt his gaze following her, steady, quiet. Just like him, something between them had begun and ended in silence, but it didn't feel unfinished. It felt real, honest, and unforgettable. Rachel knew that life would move on, but the memory of that summer, the laughter, the storm, the lake, and the unspoken confession would stay with her. Because sometimes the strongest emotions are the ones that never need to be spoken out loud. Morning light spilled through the curtains, soft and golden, marking Rachel's last day at the farmhouse. The air carried the faint scent of wet grass and coffee brewing in the kitchen. Everything looked peaceful, yet inside her chest there was a quiet ache she couldn't ignore. Her aunt was cheerful, making plans for the day, while Ethan was already outside, working as if nothing had changed. But for Rachel, everything had. She had spent 2 weeks living in stillness, surrounded by fields and open sky. And somehow, in that quiet, she had found something rare, someone who understood her without words. Now, as she packed her bag, each folded shirt felt heavier than it should. She wasn't just packing clothes. She was packing memories she didn't want to leave behind. After breakfast, her aunt announced she had errands in town and would be gone most of the day. Rachel nodded absently, pretending to listen, though her thoughts were elsewhere. She wondered if Ethan would say anything before she left, if he'd mention what had grown between them, or if he'd let it fade into silence. Outside, the sun shone over the fields, warm and bright. Rachel found Ethan by the fence, fixing a broken post. He looked up as she approached, his expression calm, unreadable. "Leaving tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, early morning." A brief silence followed. "Guess you'll be glad to be back in the city," he said lightly. Rachel tried to smile. "Maybe, but it won't feel the same now." Paused, studying her for a moment. "You'll be fine. You've got that look again." "What look?" she asked. "The one people get when they finally figure out who they are." His words hit deeper than he probably meant. Rachel looked at him, trying to memorize the quiet strength in his face, the steady kindness that had made her feel safe. "You always say the right things, don't you?" she said softly. He chuckled. "Not always. Just when it matters." They stood in silence, the wind moving gently through the tall grass. Rachel wanted to say something real, something lasting, but the words wouldn't come. Everything felt too fragile, like one wrong word would break the spell of what they had shared. Later that afternoon, her aunt returned with groceries, filling the kitchen with noise again. Rachel helped unpack while Ethan disappeared to the barn. The easy rhythm of their days together was gone. There were too many people now, too much chatter. She missed the quiet where her thoughts could breathe. As the sun began to set, Rachel slipped away from the house. She found Ethan standing by the back fence, looking toward the horizon. The sky was painted in deep orange and purple, the fields glowing under the fading light. She stopped a few steps away, unsure how to begin. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said finally. He didn't turn right away. "I figured you might." Rachel swallowed hard. "I don't really know what to say." "You don't have to," he said, still watching the sunset. Some things don't need words, but she wanted to say something. She couldn't just leave it like this. She stepped closer. "Ethan, these 2 weeks, they meant more to me than you think. You helped me remember what it feels like to be alive again. I don't think I can ever forget that." Okay, now he turned, eyes soft but steady. "I won't forget either." The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain from far away. The air between them felt heavy with everything left unsaid, every glance, every almost confession, every quiet moment that had meant too much. Rachel smiled faintly, though her throat ached. "So this is it then?" He nodded slowly. "For now, maybe. Life has a way of bringing people back around when it's meant to." She wanted to believe that. "And if it doesn't, then at least we got this," he said. "Something good? Something real." Her eyes stung, but she held the tears back. She didn't want to ruin the moment with sadness. Instead, she stepped forward and offered her hand. "Goodbye, Ethan." He looked at her hand for a moment, then took it gently. His hand was rough and warm, grounding. "Goodbye, Rachel." Neither moved. The sunset bathed